안녕하십니까, 여러분. Hello, everyone, and welcome back to Things Polyglots Know. I am Elise. And today, I'm going to follow on for Korean learners from yesterday's video about how you can use Chinese characters, hanja, in order to increase your vocabulary. I had this idea just over coffee today that what I could do in order to just show how one hanjiao, or Chinese loanword, could actually branch out into learning all sorts of other new vocabulary words and new Chinese characters as well, which in turn would allow you to branch out into all sorts of other Chinese loanwords and just have a knock-on effect to increase your vocabulary. What I might do, I put this down too early, what I might do is take a standard beginner's Korean book, in fact the first book that I ever learned Korean from, and find a Chinese loanword, a hanjiao, from one of the dialogues, and then just show how you can actually take that and branch off from it once you know the Chinese characters involved. So that's what we're going to do. This is just going to be a short thing. 가시죠. Okay, the word we're going to be using in this comes from chapter 5 of this book, and it is 종류장, or the North Korean variant of the same word, 종류소. This means stop, as in a bus stop or a tram stop. Now that breaks into 3 characters. 4 if you count the extra one, the so ending instead of jang, which we'll get to in a second. Zhong, which in this case is a Chinese character meaning to stop. Ryu, which means to stay, and when you see it at the beginning of the words in South Korean, you will find that it is often just written yu. This is because of something called the tuum popchik, the initial consonant rule that exists in the South but not in the North, and says that certain consonants can't begin words, and one of them is ryul, the RL sound. Another one that you will also see is nigun. The N sound also gets omitted, or sometimes you will have the ryul sound replaced in these things with an N. In this case, though, with ryu, it's just omitted and becomes yu. Jang, which in this case is a character meaning place, a place where something happens. Now, in the North Korean variant, you've got jongyu, which we've already talked about. I forgot to mention what ryu actually meant. Ryu is like to stay or remain in a place, to spend time in a place. So, jongyu so. So is just another word for a place where something is done. So, let's just take these one by one. The first one, jong. Remember, this is to stop. And always you need to keep in mind that there are a lot of different Chinese characters in different Chinese loanwords in Korean that are also pronounced this way, jong. And they're not necessarily going to be the same one every time. So you always do have to check with a good online dictionary like Naver or with Wiktionary to make sure that you're looking at the same character. So jong means to stop. Other words we see jong-in are jongji, which literally means to stop. The ji is another way of saying to stop. And jongjun, the jong from stop, the jun from electricity. Stop electricity, i.e. a power outage. Now, let's get to ryu, or you. One place you are you've possibly already seen this, is the word ryuhak, or in the South, yuhak. So to stay or remain, and hak, meaning study, the study of a thing. Ryuhak is a student exchange. It's the act of being an exchange student, to stay in a country and study there. So an exchange student, for example, a foreign student is a yuhakseng or ryuhakseng. And so you will see this fair bit there. And in that context, there's another word that also has this ryu in it. Je-ryu. Je means to be, to exist someplace, to be present someplace. Another one you see in a fair number of other words. And ryu, which we've just talked about, to remain in a place. And that means basically to spend time in another country. To reside in another country. It's more of an official legal term. Now we get to jang. Jang, again, is a place where something happens. Now, and it's often added to all sorts of things as a suffix to indicate that a place where the thing coming before it happens. In this case, it comes first. Jiangsu, which is a location. That su, incidentally, is the same su in Zhongyusu. So this is going to show up in both. So it is a place where something's going on. Jiangsu. Then we have Xizang. Xizang, that Xi is like as in Seoul-shi or Pyongyang-shi, meaning a city or a market, and Jiang, a place. Xizang is a marketplace. And then Hyunjang. Hyun means to appear, or like to be actual, or to be current. Jang, again, place. Hyunjang is the scene of something. For example, you might have, if you're talking about a crime scene, that would be Pomhing Hyunjang. But it can mean all sorts of other kinds of scenes of something happening. Hyunjang. Okay, now let's move over to So. So, again, is just another word for place. Zhongyusu, a place for stopping for a bus or a tram. So we've got, again, Jiangsu, which we already talked about, is an example. And then we have one that actually, here's a bonus, it actually includes characters we met last time. And a character we just met half a minute ago. It's Paljonsu. Paljonsu. Pal is the same pal as parum from last time, meaning to emit or to start something or to depart. Jon is the same jon as chongjon, electricity. Now, and su, place. And what that is, maybe you can already guess, a place where electricity departs or is emitted is a power plant. So, and now, not only do you have the characters from the initial word, we started with Chongyujang, Chongyuso, but you have all these other characters from these other words, which will allow you to branch out even more, because now you have, say, the ji, which you'll find, for example, in a word like kumji, which is like prohibition, which is prohibition, it's not like prohibition, kumji. The first character is also just prohibition or inhibition. You've got shi, as in market or city. That one is fairly self-explanatory, and you've already seen it a million times in place names if you're looking at maps or listening to people talking in Korean. And ryu, which You don't see quite as much. The two examples I gave you are probably the most common ones beyond Zhongyuzhang and Zhongyusu that you will see, but it's there. But 제 shows up in a lot of things, to be in a place, like 존재, which is existence. 존재하다, to exist. Now, without wanting to overload this short video about just one word from Teach Yourself Korean, which incidentally is a series that I would very much recommend to anyone who's looking for self-teaching books in a given language. I've always been quite happy with their stuff. What we've learned are the characters that you can learn just from looking up the Chinese characters in the extremely common Korean words 종류장 and 종류소, which you hear anytime you've got anything to do with public transport. And you've already learned from this the characters 전 for electricity, 지 meaning stopping, hyun meaning actuality or appearing, and j for to be present or exist. That is how easy Chinese characters can potentially make vocabulary learning if you just know how to leverage them properly. I'm Elise from Things Polyglots Know. 힘내시라요. Fighting! Until next time. 안녕히 계시라요.